Hello, and thank you for watching another edition of ARFCOM News. Andrew has been fired due to an incident involving a fire and a large number of government documents. Actually, no, we still have him down there in the dungeon writing scripts. We've just found so many newsworthy events that he can't really be expected to keep up on his own, so you're going to see my beautiful face from time to time. Now let's start this off with some good news for once. I know you guys have been following the events in Virginia closely, and it looks like the so-called assault weapons bill was stopped. For now. If you're new to the gun scene and you wonder why we keep using the phrase so-called in reference to these bans, it's because the term assault weapon has no real definition outside of the arbitrary distinctions drawn by various bills. In the real world, an assault weapon is a weapon used in an assault. It's an emotional term designed to conjure images of violence, but the devices defined in these various bills are functionally identical to other semi-auto firearms. Anyway, 4 Democrats sided with Republicans to keep the bill from a vote, at least until next year. Here are the committee members along with their votes. Be sure to call each and let them know what you think. Although the danger is past, this isn't exactly a stake in the heart, and it could rise from the undead next year. So don't take your eye off the ball, because there's a lot of other anti-gun bills at various points in the process in Virginia, as well as in other states. Let's move on to a gem of a quote from Joe Uncle Naughty Hands Biden. The fact is, if you're going to take on the government, you need an F-15 with Hellfire missiles. There's no way an AK-47 is going to take care of you. Now, many folks have criticized Biden for threatening gun owners, which probably goes a bit far, but it's not exactly a threat so much as it is ineffectual bleeding. Still, it's not encouraging to hear a presidential candidate make statements that can be interpreted as launching missiles on America's gun owners. Others have criticized him because he seems to have forgotten about the folks in countless third world backwaters who have fought off the full might of superpowers using Lee Einfeld's, Kalashnikovs, and M16s. Maybe Uncle Joe's unfamiliar with the term asymmetric warfare, in which case, how can he be possibly considered competent for the job he's applying to? Whatever your thoughts, his statement is sure to help his campaign. Just ask Eric Newcomb Swalwell. Next up, we have another segment from our favorite little tyrant, Michael Mini Mike Bloomberg. Mini Mike was caught on tape back in 2015 saying some disturbingly racist things, and the recording just got out last week. While defending his stop and frisk policy, Bloomberg said 95% of murderers, and murder victims fit one MO. You can just take that description, Xerox it, and pass it out to all the cops. He went on to justify the policy of throwing them against the wall in gross violation of Fourth Amendment rights. Look, acknowledging that black men are involved at a higher rate in homicide is not racist. Ignoring the complex socioeconomic factors that contribute to this situation while at the same time using it as justification for oppressive police state tactics that violate basic human rights on the grounds of ethnicity is absolutely racist. I guess it's all academic anyway, because Mini Mike's chances of securing a nomination were already pretty short before this got out.
Hey Mike, say stop and frisk. Racist piece of
Speaking of New York, on February 8th, 2 officers were shot and wounded in an assassination attempt. It began with shots fired at a police officer who was sitting in his vehicle. The officer was struck in the chin and neck, but not seriously, indicating that the shooter was likely attempting a headshot, but sucks at shooting. A few hours later, a man walked into a precinct and started shooting. A police officer was hit in the arm, but is expected to be okay. The shooter was arrested, and police believe he was responsible for the earlier shooting as well. Now, of course, this is all probably just fake news, because guns are illegal in New York City, so bad people can't use them, right? Next up, one about our friends in the Great White North, who also have draconian restrictions on gun laws. It might surprise you to find that there's anything left to be restricted up there, but Canadians actually have access to some guns that we can't buy here in the US. For example, Norinco and Polytech still import 1911s and Remington 870 clones, and the Polytech M14 is considered by some to be much higher quality than the Springfield M1A. And you can buy cool short boomsticks without a burdensome $200 tax. But as you are likely aware, Canada does have some ridiculously restrictive gun laws. It's basically impossible to carry a firearm in the course of your daily life. You have to take a test to get permission to buy any gun, and you have to renew the permission slip every 5 years. You're not allowed to possess a magazine for a centerfire gun that holds more than 10 rounds. Bullpup style firearms or conversion stocks are banned because reasons. Pistols chambered in 25 or 32 caliber are banned for other reasons. AR-15s, basically all handguns, are considered restricted firearms, so you have to get extra special permission from the state to have them, and even more special permission called an authorization to transport to take them to the range, which is the only place you can shoot a restricted firearm. You're not allowed to hunt with or otherwise discharge a restricted firearm any place other than a shooting range. There are numerous other restrictions, and Mounties basically get to write the rules that they're charged with enforcing. Part sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? With all these restrictions, it might be surprising to Americans that there is a push to further restrict gun rights in Canada, but no one ever said authoritarian control freaks were rational. The current push is to ban all handguns and many semi-auto rifles outright, but it's been met with a groundswell of opposition. 170,000 people signed a petition against further gun restrictions as of this recording, putting more signatures on it than any other petition in Canadian history. Looks to me like Canadians have had just about enough of this BS from the anti-gunners. We've commented in the past about how stupid, dangerous, and easily abused red flag laws are. They're a gross violation of the 2nd, 4th, 5th, 14th Amendments, and inevitably they deprive innocent people of their civil rights without due process. John Carpenter was confronted with this cold fact when he received a letter in the mail stating that his Florida concealed carry permit had been suspended. John is a Marine veteran and a law-abiding man. He had done nothing wrong. He simply had the same name as a drifter who was accused of domestic dispute that reads like typical Florida man stuff. For what it's worth, the petition sounds like a legitimate restraining order. An old lady says that she had a man stay at her house, and he broke some stuff, stole some things, wouldn't leave, threatened people, and flashed a gun. Real classy stuff. But that's a different John. The other John had the pleasure of going back and forth with the courts and the sheriff department, getting the runaround to get his concealed carry license back. It's not apparent whether he actually turned over any firearms. Luckily, John didn't have to appear in court, which would have been all on his own dime, but it's still a significant imposition on his time. But bad as it was for him, let's consider how downright stupid this whole thing would have been if it was the right guy. Let's say that some drug-dealing drifter who stole from an old woman actually had a concealed carry permit. Yeah, I know, it's stupid. But play along. Okay, so Mr. Drug Dealer gets the same letter in the mail. What effect do you suppose it has? Does Mr. Drug Dealer go turn in his guns and walk through the process? No, of course not. It would have zero effect on him. In one of the last free states of the Union, the majority of Republican lawmakers seem to be interested in passing a bill that would pretty much put an end to official gun-free zones. But the Republican leadership stopped it in committee last year. About half of the Senate and a third of the House were listed as co-sponsors. That's not the number that would vote for the bill, that's just how many were sponsoring the bill. Now it's likely it would have passed vote easily, but R.J. Cost, Michael Van Flattern, and Lisa Anselmi Dalton stopped the bill in committee last year. This year, it will have another chance. If it passes, it'll no longer be illegal to carry a concealed handgun at any meeting of a governmental entity, at schools, or at sporting events. It would even be legal to carry in K-12 schools if the school board approves it. What that really means is it leaves the school board free to decide whether faculty, staff, private security, or parents should be armed. Wyoming is a constitutional carry state, which means that anyone who can legally buy a pistol may also carry it concealed without first seeking the pleasure of the Crown. Of course, private property owners could still prohibit weapons. Should they be allowed to? What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below. Man, we bought a lot of guns in America last month. 1,171,478 NICS checks were performed for firearm purchases. That doesn't count private transfers and guns purchased in states where CCW permit lets you skip the NICS check. But it does give a pretty good picture on the number of new guns purchased, and it's almost up 20% from last January. In Virginia, it's up 85%. It's almost as if, threats of gun confiscations encourage people to buy more guns. Now, I'm not saying that Governor Blackface is a paid shill for the gun industry, but if he were, he'd be worth every penny they spent. Buying guns does send a message to politicians, but a much more powerful message is sent when we call them, write letters, attend rallies. Here are a few upcoming events where you can show your dedication to gun rights. If you can make it to any of them, please do so. I've seen some posts pointing out that protests won't change Bloomberg or Northam's minds. Yeah. It's mostly true. Few people leading the push to violate our rights are going to be swayed by anything at all. But that's not the point. Political action like this does make an impression on politicians who are lukewarm about the issue. They don't really care, but they do want to get reelected. So get out there and fight. If you don't have the guts to fight now, we all know you aren't down to party in the big igloo. That's all we have for you today. Andrew's going to be back on Friday with our regularly scheduled programming. From the entire ARFCOM news team, I'm Paul. Go f*** yourself, San Diego.